Welcome back to Mystery and Murder, analysis by Dr. Phil, the podcast where we don't just report the headlines, we rip the mask off the monster. This is where we dive into the darkest corners of the human psyche, unraveling the twisted motives, hidden secrets, and haunting truths that most people are too afraid to face. What drives a seemingly normal person to the edge and beyond? I say normal with quotes because what really is normal, all behavior is on a continuum that ranges all the way from the dark and ugly to the really positive, giving, angelic behavior that we hope for. And what happens when the double life that some of these monsters have built begins to crack wide open? You know, I think sometimes about this evil that drives these people, and it's always trying to bubble up. In your younger years, maybe you've been in a swimming pool and you remember these multicolored beach balls that we played with. And one of the fun things we would try to do is hold them underwater. And they were always trying to pop up. We would try to hold them under, and they'd pop up left, pop up right. And we would exhaust ourselves trying to hold that beach ball under the water in the pool. But it was always fighting to break surface and pop up. That's how I think about these monsters that are living double lives, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde existences. They have this drive within them. They can hold it in check, they can push it down, they can satiate it by acting on it from time to time, but it's always trying to pop up. It's always trying to show itself. During our last episode, we revealed the arrest of Rex Heuermann, a Long Island family man and Manhattan architect whose calm exterior may have hidden the soul of a predator. It may have been that family man architect that was trying to hold that ball under the water. Authorities claim he's the one responsible for the infamous Gilgo Beach slayings. 4 women, all escorts, who were lured into a deadly trap, brutally murdered, and tossed aside like garbage along a desolate stretch of beach. But just when it seems the nightmare has reached its end, the darkness deepens. Another victim emerges. A grieving mother on a relentless quest for justice dies under tragic circumstances. And inside the courtroom, Heuermann maintains his innocence. Where does the truth really lie? And what insight can we gain? Well, it's time we found out. Since Heuermann's arrest in 2023, he's gone from being charged with 4 victims' deaths to 7. And that's just for now. If convicted, Heuermann faces life in prison without the possibility of parole. Inside Riverhead Correctional Facility, he's housed in a 60-square-foot cell under constant surveillance. He remains separated from the general inmate population due to the disturbing nature of the charges against him. But he's not in solitary confinement. His days are reportedly filled with reading, watching television, and reviewing legal documents. His now ex-wife, Asa Ellerup, has been present at recent pretrial hearings, joined by their daughter, an emotional support dog, a certified Labrador Chihuahua mix. According to Ellerup's attorney, the dog provides calm and comfort during the emotionally charged proceedings. And the case is certainly ever evolving. In December 2024, a stunning development emerged. And understand, this was just a few months ago. As law enforcement linked Heuermann to an alleged brutal, decades-old murder that had remained a mystery for over 30 years. Back in November of 1993, hunters discovered a body of 28-year-old Sandra Castilla in a remote wooded area of North Sea, Long Island, about 60 miles from Gilgo Beach. Now, Castilla had been strangled and left partially clothed, with authorities determining that she had been lying in the woods for several days before being found. Now, for decades, her killer walked free. But after the arrest of Heuermann, DNA testing linked hairs found on her body to him, enabling law enforcement to charge him with Castilla's murder. Now the timeline of his alleged crimes has shifted all the way back to the 90s, making Sandra Castilla his earliest alleged victim, or at least that we've discovered so far. This discovery begs the question, how many more bodies of innocent victims might be out there waiting to be discovered? And could they also be tied to this alleged serial killer? Now, to understand what we're dealing with here, we have to step back and profile how serial killers operate for such a long period of time and escape discovery. It's not that they're lucky. They are very ritualistic. They're very ritualistic in their behaviors and strategic in their planning. These killers act with a very thoughtful, planned out mechanism. It's not impulse. Now, according to Dr. J. Reed Malloy, a clinical professor of psychiatry at UC San Diego and board-certified forensic psychologist, for serial killers, repetition often becomes a psychological crutch. Things build up inside them, and then it's like hitting a release valve when they act to let go of that tension, that pressure, that desire they have inside. And it allows them to fuel an illusion of control over their dark compulsions, while solidifying a twisted belief that they use to justify their actions. So again, I'm using the analogy of holding this ball underwater. It's fighting to get up, it's fighting to get up. And eventually, they can't hold it. They become exhausted fighting this constant impulse to act on their perverse rage, whatever it is that's driving them. And then when they do, it's a feeling of power that they have. They get these compulsive thoughts and twisted beliefs that they use to justify their actions. They don't act on impulse. These aren't opportunity killers. They wait, they watch, and they follow strict internal rules, striking only when the conditions feel right. And understand, right means they have every advantage, because these are cowards. I mean absolute cowards. Let me give you another example. Joseph James DeAngelo, the Golden State Killer, remained undetected for over 40 years. And he did so through careful geographic control and planning. Now, there are also cooling off periods. Robert K. Ressler, another key figure in the development of FBI profiling techniques, has also highlighted the importance of these cooling off periods. He notes that these intervals distinguish serial killings from other types of multiple homicides, like those that go on a killing spree, or mass murderers who will kill a number of people in one location in a very short period of time. These serial killers, they ebb and flow when they can control the impulses, and I'll talk about how they might do that in a few minutes, as opposed to those who have these uncontrolled spree killings, these mass killings. They don't have any breaks. It's all concentrated. Now, FBI profilers note that cooling off periods don't mean that the urge is gone. No, not at all. When I said I want to explain how they work, they're often filled with doing homework, building the case. They stalk, they fantasize, and they're meticulous in their preparation. And sometimes life events get in the way. They may get sick, they may get married, and so they're distracted for a time. They may have children. This can interrupt the rhythm and suppress the compulsion, but the need for control always simmers beneath. This is power. Even though there may be sexual involvement, it's always about power. It's not about the sex. It's being able to lord over and control that individual right up till the minute that they die. And it's why they almost always have some kind of ritualistic killing. They don't just pull them off and shoot them in the back of the head. No. There has to be a ritualistic killing. That's where torture comes in. That's why they go through this kind of evil dance of getting them into their trap, getting them into their web. They need to see them suffer. They need to see them involved in the whole process. That's how they get satisfaction from it. They're just waiting for the chance for this to emerge. And investigators believe Heuermann may have committed some murders in his home while his family was away because prosecutors found timelines and even a planning document in his possession detailing how he used their absence to carry out the crimes. So what may have seemed like really protracted cooling off periods may in fact have been times when he had a safe place and was able to do this without leaving any trace whatsoever. Coming up, both the prosecution and defense teams are meticulously building their cases in preparation for a trial that's expected to be as complex as it is high profile. You've heard me say it before. Real change starts with real understanding, and that's why I've had Dr. Daniel Amen on my show many times over the years. At Amen Clinics, they do something different. They look at your brain. With nearly 300,000 brain scans from patients in over 155 countries, they take the guesswork out of mental health care. Anxiety, depression, trauma, memory issues. If you're struggling, it's time for answers. Call 866-580-6569 or go to amenclinics.com/Dr. Phil and take the first step. Call 866-580-6569 or go to amenclinics.com/Dr. Phil. You have to understand, when I'm saying that this is all about power, there's a grandiosity involved here. There's such delusional thinking where they actually can convince themselves that they're doing these people a favor, that this is a gift. These people that they're going to kill are special because they chose them. Many of these serial killers develop a sense of superiority over law enforcement because they get away with this for a period of time, and they're very smug about this. They take pleasure in eluding capture, of course, and taunting authorities. Serial killers with psychopathic traits may experience what we call duping delight. This is a term that was coined by psychologist Paul Ekman to describe the pleasure that some of these people feel just from deceiving others, not from the crime itself, but from the fact that they're getting away with it. They might be standing next to investigators at a crime scene. They might be standing next to a cop on the sidewalk that I alluded to earlier. They're often revealed through unconscious smirks or subtle expressions. It's all about the thrill of beating the system, being the smartest person in the room. It's all about this manipulation, evasion, outsmarting law enforcement. The Zodiac Killer's cryptic letters exemplify this narcissistic thrill-seeking and the desire to outsmart investigators. And you'll remember Heuermann allegedly called victim Melissa Barthelomy's sister on more than one occasion, saying just terrible things. On one such call, he allegedly stated that he killed Melissa and was going to, quote unquote, watch her rot. Now, imagine that you have a loved one that has gone missing, and you're hoping against hope that she'll be found, that maybe she was kidnapped, she'll escape, and then somebody calls and says, hey, you know your loved one, your sister, your mother, your daughter, whatever, I killed her, and I'm going to, quote, watch her rot. That is pure power. It is sick, twisted power. An example of longtime serial killer, in addition to BTK, Ted Bundy, there was Gary Ridgway, also known as the Green River Killer. He killed over a 20-year period and was convicted of 49 murders, but yet held a steady job, kept a very low profile, never stopped until he was caught, and I believe never would have stopped. Now, regardless of the prosecution's case and new evidence, Heuermann has pleaded not guilty to all charges. And in the meantime, both the prosecution and defense teams are meticulously building their cases in preparation for a trial that's expected to be as complex as it is high profile. Now, let's understand, for a narcissistic player like Heuermann with a false sense of superiority, this is a big show for him. I mean, he's just waiting to be in the spotlight. You would think this is a pretty open and shut case, so let's take a look at the prosecution strategy and key evidence here. DNA evidence is about as slam dunk as you can get, and it is a central pillar of the prosecution's case. The prosecutors say the DNA evidence ties Heuermann to multiple victims. You have to think about the digital blueprints for murder that we talked about, how investigators uncovered a plethora of allegedly incriminating materials when they searched his Massapequa, Long Island home. Prosecutors say an ominous file that they found in his home contained plans for murder, including checklists for before, during, and after the killings. Written in all caps, the file featured phrases like, get sleep before hunt, remove head and hands, small is good, suggesting a preference for petite victims. Now, let's take a minute here. These are not things you need to write down, okay? Get sleep before hunt. Okay, small is good. Is a suggestion here that he would forget, oh, yeah, I meant to get somebody small. I didn't mean to get a 250-pound woman that I couldn't move. Look, he's not writing this down because he's going to forget. He's writing this down because he's playing this out in his head. This is a fantasy rehearsal he's going through. He's being very dramatic. He's writing this out, and as he's writing it, he's going through this in his head, imagining a small, petite frame that he could pick up and carry where he wanted to if necessary. And notes titled Things to Remember. And it detailed lessons from prior crimes, such as using heavier rope and minimizing noise to prolong playtime. Come on. He's not writing this because he's putting together a playbook. He's doing this because he's reliving the crimes. This is part of the period between kills. This is all narcissistic melodrama on his part. And investigators believe that the document may connect him to additional victims, including a woman named Valerie Mack. You look at this man's alleged language. He's writing out terrifying things like he's jotting down a grocery or to-do list, and he doesn't need a grocery or to-do list. Note how he allegedly refers to murder as a hunt. This again speaks to his possible sense of grandeur. His writing indicates that he fancies himself as a predator in power, at the top of the food chain. There's no hunt here. He's calling Craigslist or some other list to book a sex worker. The prey doesn't even know they're prey. He's promising them money to come meet him, and he's getting somebody that's minuscule in comparison to him. There's going to be one trial for 7 murders, and prosecutors are pushing for a single trial covering all single victims. That's what they want. They want to get people to understand that we're dealing with a monster here. And they want to argue the pattern and evidence are too closely connected to be separate. So they're saying, look, these may have been scattered across the beach. Some of them were in a nearby area, but clearly this is the same person. And it seems a lot more evil when you realize he's doing this in rhythm, in a pattern. Now, as I say, he has pled not guilty because he wants his show. Of course he wants to get away with it, but he wants his show. The defense strategy is to attack the DNA. They have no choice because it's so damning. They're going to challenge the DNA evidence, questioning the validity of the testing methods, which they argue haven't been accepted in New York courts. They're going to say that a lot of the evidence is circumstantial and not concrete. His legal team insists there's no direct evidence tying him to any of the crime scenes. They argue the case is built on these circumstantial and speculative claims and connections. And they're fighting trial consolidation. The defense opposed the move to combine all charges into one trial, arguing that each case should be judged on its own to ensure fairness. Of course, they don't want any of the evidence of any of the other crimes to come in. They don't want to show pattern. They don't want to show how it all fits onto his life timeline. They don't want any of the evidence of a murder book that he kept at home and plans for other killings. They don't want none of that to come in. They just want this to be, hey, we found a body on the beach, we think he did it. And then they're going to attack the DNA evidence and say that you can't even admit that. They don't want the jury to hear one word about his DNA appearing on that body. And you would think, well, that's pretty damning. It seems like that ought to come in. And you're right, it should, and I have no doubt that it will, but they're going to fight that. Now, Heuermann's case is really in the midst of pretrial hearings right now where these arguments over evidence and trial structure are taking center stage. That's where they fight out what gets in, what gets out, and the official trial date remains pending because there's so much to be argued before they ever get there. And in recent court appearances, Heuermann appeared calm and reserved. At his 2024 arraignment, he spoke briefly, telling the court, "I'm not guilty of any of these charges." That was a quote. Observers described him as stoic, showing little or no emotion during the proceedings. And his attorney, Michael J. Brown, stated that Heuermann is eager to face the allegations and is prepared to challenge the evidence. Now, let's take a closer look at what we can infer so far from the victim profiles and the autopsy findings. Now, while the official reports remain sealed from public view, several key patterns have begun to emerge. Like, is there something here that ties them all together? Is there an MO? Well, let's look at the victim profiles. Most confirmed victims were young women engaged in sex work, many of whom advertised their services online. Okay, so once they were killed, what did he do with the bodies? Well, several were found wrapped in burlap and discarded in secluded locations across Long Island. So there was geographic consistency for the dumping grounds, which were often isolated, marshy, or wooded, including Manorville and Gilgo Beach. Now, there's a pattern because the investigators believe the killer used burner phones and fake email accounts to lure victims under false identities. I said originally there were 4, and now ultimately there are 7. 5 of the 7 died from strangulation, while 2 were dismembered with undetermined causes of death. That's Jessica Taylor and Valerie Mack. Their torsos were found in Manorville, New York, with additional remains recovered near Gilgo Beach. Now, the precise causes of death for these 2 victims have not been publicly revealed. Meanwhile, victim Sandra Castilla had been strangled and suffered multiple sharp force injuries to her face, torso, breast, and vaginal area. Now remember, this is the earliest victim so far that's been tied to Heuermann. And what it suggests is that his alleged methods may have shifted over time from dismembered, scattered remains to victims wrapped in burlap. This indicates either that his MO was evolving or there could have been multiple offenders. Clearly, the variation in body conditions complicates the timeline and suggests possible experimentation or adaptation. So, how do prosecutors explain this? I mean, do serial killers stick to their methods? Well, many do stick to a chosen method. It can be tied to their psychological fantasy that they need to play out to achieve the emotional or sexual release, or just certain things they need to do. Now, John Douglas, a top FBI expert, opines, and I think quite rightly, that the MO may evolve, but the signature frequently stays consistent. For example, Dennis Rader, the BTK killer, always bound his victims, hence the B for bind. Their method becomes part of who they are, and changing it risks breaking the fantasy. They have to do certain things to pay off these perverse needs that they have. But people change. When you're talking about sometimes 10, 20, 30, even 40 years, their physical condition changes in terms of what they can do. Their needs may change, their fantasies may change, so their MO may shift across time. And they also get better at it with practice. Repetition allows refinement. They become more skilled over time. And some do deviate. Dr. Catherine Ramsland, she's a psychologist and professor renowned for her work in serial killers, says that changes in environment, emotional state, or desire to avoid detection can alter behavior. Rick Ramirez, aka the Night Stalker, was completely unpredictable. He constantly changed weapons, victims, and tactics. Some of them experiment or escalate when earlier methods don't work anymore. I mean, the earlier methods get the victim dead, but it doesn't get them the gratification they're looking for. Like Ted Bundy, for example, escalated to extreme brutality with his attacks and murders as time went on. So he didn't start that way, but he had to go further and further and do more and more in order to get the gratification he was looking for. So, as of now, Heuermann has been charged with the murders of 7 women. Several other victims discovered in the same region remain unlinked to him, including Karen Vergate, formerly known as Jane Doe No. 7, who was identified in 2023 after her remains were discovered in 2 locations years apart. And don't forget about Peaches, the unidentified woman with the distinct fruit tattoo, and her daughter, Baby Doe, whose remains were found in separate locations. Another case, remember, Asian Doe, an unidentified individual of Asian descent, believed to have died between 2001 and 2006. Now, these cases have not been officially linked to Heuermann yet, and that's due to a lack of conclusive forensic evidence which erodes over the years. There were differing methods of killing and disposal, and inconsistencies in timing and geography. However, the investigation is active, with experts continuing to apply advanced forensic tools like genetic genealogy to pursue answers. And let me tell you, as time passes, science is getting better and better, and I believe he will be tied to these killings. Now, meanwhile, fallout from his arrest, this is not just him and the families of those he's allegedly killed who are left behind to endure this pain. The man accused of being the Gilgo Beach serial killer, he wasn't just a husband and a father. He was the foundation of a family that's now just torn apart by all this scandal. They didn't do anything wrong. Nobody even alleges that they knew anything about this. The family's Long Island home, once just another quiet house in Massapequa Park, became a media magnet. Reporters swarmed, neighbors talked. Curiosity turned that home into a crime scene in the public eye. His now ex-wife moved with her children and attempted to leave it all behind for a quieter life in South Carolina. But even there, the past follows. Victoria, who used to work alongside her father at his Manhattan architecture firm, has struggled to even land a job since the arrest. And in another bombshell, at a June 2024 press conference, attorney John Ray showcased disturbing Tumblr content, the dating site, that he attributed to Victoria Heuermann. Ray characterized the images as sadistic, citing themes like decapitation, cannibalism, and torture, imagery he claimed mirrored the brutality of the Gilgo Beach murders. He pointed to one graphic piece in particular showing a monstrous figure devouring a woman's breast and alleged that Victoria was the artist behind it. He also pointed to her alleged involvement in the fury in the community, hinting at possible psychological issues or a deeper link to her father's alleged crimes. But let's be clear. Experts have pushed back. They say that while the material might raise eyebrows, it's not criminal. And interest in fantasy or subcultures doesn't make someone guilty of anything. So they're saying, look, this may, even if it is hers, it may seem weird, it may seem perverse, but fantasy art doesn't make someone guilty of anything. Moreover, Victoria's attorney has dismissed these claims, stating there's zero evidence to substantiate them. Again, it's important to clarify that neither Asa Ellerup nor her children have been charged, nor are they considered suspects in this case. Prosecutors have confirmed that the family was out of town during the time frames when the murders are believed to have occurred. Children of serial killers, oh man, they've got it so tough. Can you imagine living that down? And I'm not trying to garner sympathy for the Heuermann family as opposed to the victims' families, but this impacts everybody. Just think about it. If your father is found out to be this monstrous, perverse serial killer, your identity is just shattered. You're going to be an emotional mess. You're going to feel shock and betrayal, loss of personal identity. Carrie Rawson, the daughter of the BTK killer, Dennis Rader, who I've interviewed, said it felt like her entire life had been a lie. Said he was one thing to me and he was something else to everybody else. So as much of a monster as he is to the world, I still have good memories of him playing with me and being kind to me. But now it seems like everything was a lie. So they're left with depression and anxiety and PTSD. Rawson openly shared her continued battle with these issues. Stigma, social isolation. Look, this can just all lead to so much judgment from others and a deep sense of personal shame. Melissa Moore, her father was the happy face killer, recalled fearing people would judge her for her father's crimes, saying, "I was always afraid that if people knew who my father was, they would look for my flaws." They have such grief and they try to forgive, but it's really hard because they condemn what he has done and they feel betrayed by him at the same time. Carrie Rawson said that her journey towards forgiveness was for her own healing. It had nothing to do with him. She said, "I had to do it for myself. I wasn't forgiving what he did. It was just really hard, doubly hard." So they carry these deep scars. On December 13th, 2011, nearly 19 months after she disappeared into the darkness, police finally found what was left of Shannon Gilbert, the missing woman who unintentionally brought these many other murders to light. Remember, she's the one that started this all. Knocking on the door in the neighborhood, asking for help, not getting it. Her skeletal remains lay hidden in the dense marshland near Oak Beach, just a stone's throw from where her haunting 911 call had been made. Just a week earlier, her purse, shoes, jeans, and cell phone had been found scattered across the same haunting stretch of marshland. A quiet, unsettling breadcrumb trail that clearly pointed towards tragedy. Authorities quickly ruled her death an accidental drowning, claiming Shannon had become disoriented and wandered into the marsh, overwhelmed by panic and the elements. Yeah, her family didn't buy that, not for a second. They believe Shannon didn't just die, they believe she was killed. Mary Gilbert, Shannon's mother, made it her mission to uncover the truth. She brought in attorney John Ray and pushed for an independent autopsy by renowned pathologist Dr. Michael Bodden, who concluded that Shannon had been strangled. Mary didn't stop there. She filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Dr. Peter Hackett, a local physician, who had inserted himself into the case by claiming he had seen Shannon the night she vanished. Mary Gilbert alleged he misled investigators and failed to provide appropriate care. Her relentless pursuit of the truth ended in tragedy. Long before justice ever had a chance to be served, on July 23, 2016, Mary Gilbert was found brutally murdered in her daughter Sarah's apartment, stabbed more than 200 times and bludgeoned with a fire extinguisher. Sarah, who had long struggled with schizophrenia, claimed she acted under the influence of hallucinations and the voices in her head. Still, the jury found her guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced her to 25 years to life behind bars. Mary, the woman who had fought so fiercely for justice in her daughter Shannon's name, became a victim herself. Not at the hands of a faceless killer, from the marshes of Long Island, but from within the very home she had fought to keep safe. Mary Gilbert's life and death serve as a haunting testament to the devastating toll of untreated mental illness and the unimaginable tragedies that can follow. But even so, her voice still echoes in the Gilgo Beach investigation, and she endures as a powerful example of relentless determination in the face of systematic neglect. This case stands as a chilling reminder that true evil can lurk in plain sight, hidden behind the mask of normalcy. But it also marks a turning point, a testament to how modern tools like advanced DNA analysis and digital forensics can pull long-buried truths into the light. For the families who've waited decades, it's not just about prosecution. It's about long overdue justice. When science meets relentless determination, silence shatters, secrets unravel, and justice finally begins to stir. We'll continue tracking every development as this case unfolds. Watch for bonus episodes of this, because as things happen, I'm going to analyze them, break them down, and give you the scoop. So this is a case that is progressing. Thank you for listening up to this point. Be sure to follow and subscribe to Mystery and Murder, Analysis by Dr. Phil. It's available on all podcast players and on YouTube. And thank all of you for your amazing response since we've relaunched new cases on Mystery and Murder. You are making this one of the hottest podcasts on the internet. And I appreciate that. I hope we're all learning something. I certainly do every time I dig into one of these. So hit that subscribe and follow, and I will see you on our next case.